I'm really thrilled and excited to open this training activity. And I really apologize in advance, either for my English and my excitation. I was asked to speak slowly and clearly, and that is nearly impossible for me, but I will do my best. Today, I will present the general framework within this training courses being created, that is inclusive design. I will share with you the new definition of disability, and new is in bracket because this definition follows the revolution started in 2001, 23 years ago, when the World Health Organization issued the International Classification of Functioning, followed then by the United Nations Convention on the Rights of People with Disability that collected the main principles set forth by ICF and established, in a way, some rights that are now protected by all our national laws. Then we will see why we need to work on our brain first to acquire the proper mindset, and what designers project and partnership are committed to accomplish with this course and with all the other activities in order to proceed and support all of us towards a real inclusive design. What is inclusive design? This is the definition I found on Wikipedia. Funny enough, it is really good, or at least it is consistent with our view. Because inclusive design is defined as a design process in which product, services, environments, and I would add policies, strategies, organization are designed to be usable for as many people as possible. That means not only disabled people, its focus is on fulfilling as many user needs as possible, not just as many users as possible. Traditionally, when we think about accessibility, we think about physical accessibility for mobility impaired people, narrowing more for people on a wheelchair. This is the outcome of the paradigm we've been born and raised, and we will see it later. But the inclusive design, rather than focusing on disabilities, is a methodology that emphasizes diversity. Human diversity could affect the ability of everybody to use a product, a service, or environment. And human diversity is not about ability only, but is also about language, gender, age, background, cultural background. So, inclusive design reframes disability as a mismatch between the needs of a user and the design of a product or system. So it is clear right from this moment that disability can be experienced by any user. With this framing, it becomes clear that inclusive design is not limited to interfaces or technology, but can be applied to the design of everything, including policies or infrastructure. Because design is design. It must be inclusive in itself. Inclusive design is designed to poor, because design is for people, and people are just a huge variety of needs and desire. Apparently, it is simple, isn't it? Then, why this world is not accessible yet, let alone inclusive? Here is when a look at our brain is required. Don't worry, I'll try to be fast and not furious. As I said, is a matter of paradigm, because our brain prefers to work in an energy-saving mode. That is why, in spite of our goodwill and sensitiveness, our thoughts, words, and actions are often driven by unconscious habits created by the place and time we were born and raised, by our culture, in a word, by the paradigm. In this case, the paradigm of disability. A paradigm is a frame of reference, is a vision that regards some aspects of our reality. And what is important, and I will repeat it again and again later on, that a paradigm is made of thoughts that produce words that help us to make choices and to make actions, and then to use techniques and practices. So paradigm is not just philosophy. What is the paradigm of disability? It is effectively summarized in the definition of disability written in the United Nations Convention of Rights for People with Disabilities. And I'm gonna read it because I put it into my slide. Persons with disability include those who have long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairment, which, in interaction with various barriers, may hinder their full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with others. This definition is a law in all our states, because the convention has been received in the Latvian, Lithuanian, and Italian legal framework. So it displays its effects on our national laws. Apparently, at a superficial reading, it may seem something quite obvious, something that we know and we are familiar with. But this definition is the outcome of a substantial gestation on international gestation. The International Classification of Functioning, published again by the World Health Organization in 2001, defines disability not as a condition of the person, but as a result of a relation, of an interaction between a person with his health condition and the environment, which can be facilitating, so favorable environment, or limiting, so creating barriers. So it is a consequence or result of a complex relationship between the individual health condition and the personal environmental factors that are the context in which this individual lives. For this reason, it is not a classification of diseases, but a classification of the component of health in a given environment. So the ICF provides a consistent perspective of the different dimensions of health at the biological, individual, and social level, considering three different points of view: the body, the person, and the person in a context. But let's see it in a more accessible, in brackets again, way. Who are we talking about? We are talking about people and environment. So the disability is not a characteristic of the person. A person is not disabled. He or she has a disability. It occurs when the person meets an environment that can hinder his or her participation, creating barriers. Participation means doing what I want to do, how I can do it. What do we mean with the word environment? Thinking about environment, usually we think about the built environment only, the so-called architectural barriers. But disability can be increased or even created by other barriers. There are cultural, social, economical barriers. Environment is the world in which the person lives. But let's deepen this concept a little bit further on. People can be described through their needs and desires. There are no special needs, and this is important and shows in a way how paradigm functions. In Italy, at least, the educational needs of people with disability or specific learning needs are labeled as special, as it were different from the learning needs of other students. But the need to learn, to play, to live independently, to love, to travel are common needs for all the human race. The special needs separate some groups from others and oblige us to think, to separate and different solutions, categorizing. There are no special needs. Sometimes, and less often than we think, the solution shall be special, but not the needs. I will repeat again this concept because it is a very important methodological approach. We are used to think and work with categories, often represented by a bidimensional image, a stereotype, an abstract idea that doesn't find the correspondence in reality. The disabled, the blind, the foreign student, and we proceed adapting our work to those categories separately. The inclusive approach based on functioning and needs is more effective, and we will see, will help us to support more students with the same solution at the same time. We have described people talking of needs and desires. And now let's talk about environment. Again, as I have already said, environment is not only the built environment, the one we all automatically think of, but also and simultaneously is the social, economical, and cultural one. The concept of disability as a person-environment relationship is really revolutionary, and It seems obvious, but please, let's look together at the consequences on our view of our work. First, the built parental, economical, and social and cultural environment determines how a person is disabled, not his or her health condition. With the same health condition, an amputated child, an amputated boy living in the third world can be kept at home out of shame. He can even be not being fed if food is scarce, because he lives in a poor environment. In Italy, the same boy can be a Paralympic champion, can attend school, can graduate, and can reach his full participation within the society. Two girls with the same type of Down syndrome, of the same age, of the same town, and maybe in the same classroom, may have two completely different disabilities, because one has grown in an overprotective family, not letting her acquire independence. The second one is raised by a very empowering family. The disability the two girls show are completely different. This definition helps us to understand that people with disability, as well as all the people in the world, are different one from the other. It also helps us to consider sensory disabilities, which are very well regulated in law, but when designing, not often come to our mind. The definition obliges us to think in terms of functioning rather than limitation. Another very important thing is that we all are environment for someone else. My English, my way to speak can bore you or can stimulate you, so can be habilitating or disabilitating. We all have a personal responsibility to be facilitators or barrier, especially those who, because of their jobs, are creators of environment, and teachers are among them. The way we teach, the way we design, the way we evaluate a project affects someone else and could make them even more disabled. And last, since no one has a perfect health, we are all in some way disabled or can be disabled by a hostile environment. Usually in Italy, a typical university course, the public university, is often a lecturer speaking in front of a classroom that could be formed by even 200 persons. And then the students have to read book and learn a lesson. This does not help those students who does need visual reference to better learn and memorize. In this case, they are disabled by the environment, even though they have no certified disabilities. Therefore, we can't work mechanically with standard solution or uncritically applying recipes and lists of tips. The point in every choice, in every action, is to facilitate. And to do so, the first starting point is to know who we have in front. How the students, in this case, function, how they receive and understand space, contents, lesson at their best, and what their worlds are to be effective. Of course, we cannot have a deep knowledge of everybody in the world, but we can have a good knowledge of our students, the one we have in front. And I mean all the students, not only the one with disabilities. So, what is accessibility? It is interesting because I will start reading the definition given by the Oxford Dictionary. Because when we think about the word accessibility, we think about reaching or entering a place easily. But this is only the first meaning, because accessibility means contemporary three things. First, the quality of being able to be reached or entered, okay? This is the first and often the only meaning coming up to our mind. But the second meaning is the quality of being easy to obtain and use. For instance, in the phrase, students were concerned about the accessibility of quality academic counseling. The third meaning is the quality of being easily understood or appreciated. Therefore, something, a course, a lesson, a place, a university, a library, is accessible when simultaneously can be easily reached, used, enjoyed, and understood by as many types of functioning as possible. This is accessibility, and that's why accessibility is inclusion. And accessibility and inclusion require multidisciplinarity and an integrated systemic approach. Because the aim of accessibility, reaching accessibility, requires necessarily the integration of different tools, approach, services in a multidisciplinary perspective. Every environment, every space, every service must be read in the light of the type of people that will live and use and experience that place, service, product, and so on. Every classroom, every course, every public building has its unique social, cultural, and architectural characteristics, and as do the users that inhabit or frequent it, being them students, teachers, administrative staff, visitors, and so on. So a careful analysis of the context allows us to understand and in the end identify different needs, so as to be able to acquire the best information from competent source. And the most competent source to know who the students are first of all, the students themselves. No designer can solve the issue of inclusion alone. And as design includes everything, it is clear that a teacher is a designer too, as they have to design their courses, their lesson, and their daily work within the classroom. Again, a designer cannot solve the issue of inclusion alone. To be inclusive, every activity in the environment in the widest meaning, I use the word environment, must concern both structure and organization to allow the integration of all the environmental factors involved. This includes not only the accessibility of the building, the setting of the classroom, but also furnitures, technologies, procedures, communication, and a well-trained teaching and non-teaching staff. It's a new design approach that shifts the focus from affording each specific situation as soon as it raises from a systemic vision and design approach. Only the dialogue, the constant dialogue among all the elements that form a specific environment and all the professionals involved can ensure the inclusive dimension as foreseen and described by the current legislation. Yes, at this point, it is really important to stress that we are not in the realm of ethics and sensitiveness, but we are talking about rights existing and protected by law. That's why I have again copied here the definition of disabilities in the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disability. Because, as I said, it has been received in our national laws and displays its effects in our national legal framework. The definition is very important now to understand the purpose of the scope of what we mean with inclusion. We all have our national laws on education, accessibility, inclusion, but all of them must be interpreted now in the light of the principle set forth within the UN Convention. This interpretation is the best compass we have now to navigate the stormy sea of national laws and keep the right direction. The right direction is the aim of inclusive design as stated in this article, in this definition. Freedom of choice, autonomy, and independence. This is what participation on an equal basis with others means. In education, autonomy does not mean being left alone. We will see it later when we will go through the Article 24 named education. Autonomy does not exclude tutoring or specific support because the goal is to enable everyone to make the most out of their abilities and capacities. And some people may need time or people to support and motivate them in a one-to-one relationship for part or for all the educational journey. But let's go through the most significant articles of the UN Convention. Okay. Universal design, inclusive design, design for all are just labels. As you can see in the general obligation, two words are important to be stressed. Eliminate discrimination and promote research and development of universally designed goods. So, in the general obligation, the first principle that comes out is non-discrimination. Even though there is a very specific article, Article 5, in this, with this topic. And second, the promotion of universal design. Again, Universal design, inclusive design, design for all are labels. The concept is more important. My colleague will follow from Design for All Italia, will follow with a lecture about human-centered design, and for sure will explain definition and principle of design for all. Beyond names, what I would like to stress here is the fact that the approach we are discussing today is the first and main tool to attain the goals set out in the UN Convention, that is to make the rights of people real. Article 5 I mentioned before. Non-discrimination. Discrimination on the basis of disability includes any form of discrimination, including the refusal of reasonable accommodation. Non-discrimination is really important because at least in Italy, I don't know in Latvia or Lithuania, but in Italy, we have a jungle of laws on accessibility, education, integration, whatever. And often they contradict one with the other. And often they are old and they have proven not to be working or effective. Non-discrimination, bearing in mind the non-discrimination principle, helps us to go beyond laws and to use our intelligence, experience, and common sense to see whether something, although it is legal, that is admitted by the national law, is actually discriminating and therefore not to be applied. What is reasonable accommodation? According to the UN Convention, reasonable accommodation refers to the necessary and appropriate modification and adjustment that do not impose a disproportionate or undue burden where needed in particular case to ensure that persons with disability enjoy and exercise on equal basis with others all human rights and fundamental freedoms. You don't have to think about big accommodation or big solution. You know, even changing the disposal of chairs and desks in a classroom could be reasonable accommodation. If the students that are attending that place need a different setting to better enjoy, to better learn first. And not only, as we have already seen, students with certified disabilities, but all the students. These could be considered a reasonable accommodation. And people with disability have the right to ask a reasonable accommodation to be provided. So, in education, provided that there is no magical list of solutions, and that reasonable accommodation and classroom adjustments shall always be individualized and based on students' needs. Many universities list, among the others, with reasonable accommodation, for instance, the availability of software for note-taking assistance, extended time on tests and exams, low distraction testing environments, there is one-to-one, for instance, or quiet places. For visually impaired, large print handouts, equipment labels, class assignments made available in electronic formats, books available in PDF with that can be read by the screen reader, raised line drawings and tactile models, and possibility to attend lessons and or the exams remotely from home in case of illness or in case of period of time when the physical or psychological condition do not allow the student to sit in classroom with the others. Reasonable accommodation is again mentioned in the Article 24 concerning education, which we will see now in details because each and every product and activity of the DESIG project, including this course, has embedded the principles that I'm going to outline, and they have become our goals. So education is a right. and an inclusive educational system at all levels is the answer. The aim is not only to ensure the full development as citizen of people with disability, but also strengthen the respect for human rights and human diversity. This is very important because this part concerns not only students with disability, but all the students. Our teaching, the way we teach and the contents we teach shall go towards the respect of human diversity and therefore towards the embedding inclusion design in the mind of their student in all the activities they will perform as professionals. Inclusive design is not a bunch of technological tools and methodology. It is a mental view, is a vision. It is an approach that reviews the content thoughts in order to reinforce the idea that every design is designed for diversity. And we will see it in a minute. So, what is inclusive learning then? Inclusive learning and teaching recognizes all students' entitlement to a learning experience that respects diversity, enables participation, removes barrier, and anticipates and considers a variety of learning needs and preferences. So, as we have already seen, when I mentioned the definition of accessibility as simultaneously using, reaching, and understanding, inclusive learning is simply enabling students to understand at their best content and activities, to reach premises, laboratories, products, to obtain and use tools that fulfill their learning needs, allowing them, all of them, to participate, to give their contribution, and to help the student with disability to be appreciated. Okay, the second one works. So that means that inclusive learning is providing the students with different choices, different offers according to different learning styles, different way to express and communicate, and different way to be engaged in learning. All the students during the course will focus on the learning needs of people with disability, but we all will soon realize that the same answer to those needs can help many students without disability to improve, because inclusive learning is reaching, using, and obtaining, and therefore it is offering something different for different learning styles with different technologies and different methodology. So what is universal design for learning? Again, names are labeled. I know what you are thinking now. I know, and I'm really sorry. I know that you are thinking, okay, enough with this theory, too much theory. What can we do practically? Please be patient, because time for practical suggestion will come, maybe starting this afternoon or hopefully later on. But at the moment is really important to set our mind properly. Universal design for learning can really support the creation of an inclusive learning educational environment. Please, again, those are principles, and principles are suggestions, not solutions. Inclusive learning, in fact, is a daily creative work. Nevertheless, they can be helpful to pin the huge bulk of information I'm providing you to an ordered framework. So, universal design learning is a set of principles for curriculum development to give all the individuals equal opportunities to learn. They are based on neurological studies and provides a basis for creating instructional goals, defining instructional goals, creating methods, materials, content, and assessment that work for everyone, not just a single one-size-to-fit solution, but a flexible approach that can be customized and adjusted quickly and easily after a little bit of practice for individual needs. So the first principle is to provide multiple means of engagement, the why of learning, to motivate, stimulate different learners with different type of functioning. The second principle is to provide multiple means of representation, the what of learning. Learners differ in the ways they can perceive and comprehend information that are presented to them. Some of them are more visual than auditive, or they are kinesthetic. They learn to do something to fix and memorize. The third principle is to provide multiple means of action and expression, the how of learning. Learners differ in the way they can navigate through a learning environment, and above all, the way they can express what they have learned. So again, it's a matter of providing multiple offers, multiple choice. So far, we have introduced what is universal design for learning, and it mainly refers to the job done by teachers, that is the process of teaching. But we should make a step forward, looking into the process of design itself, and think about contents too. The Designers Partnership has developed this framework that inspires either this teacher's training course and all our work. You will see some circles, one within the other. The more external circle, the blue one, is attitudes and approach, because attitudes is the foundation that we have to check and work on. We should ask ourselves, what is my idea of teaching? What are my aims? What is my idea of inclusion, and whom do I think that shall be included? Those questions and this circle has a lot to do with cognitive bias and paradigm too. Approach is consequent. What is learning inclusion, and how does it affect my job, my personal responsibility towards my student? How can I convey a proper inclusive attitude to my students so that they can contribute to a more inclusive environment where everyone can feel more at ease? How can I stimulate my student to be a resource themselves for inclusive learning? The second circle regards methods and strategy. What learning strategies do I know? What can be useful to transfer with the training? How can I design my curriculum to be a more efficient and effective in an inclusive meaning? The method and strategies, of course, require some tools and techniques. What are the facilitating tools and techniques to support disabled students? And not only the disabled student, all my students, because all of them have different learning needs. How can I support different functioning and different learning styles? But it is the inner circle that is innovative in the project. Contents. How can I include inclusive design specifically related to my teaching subjects? How can I teach the future designer to focus on the human variety than on inconsistent or unreal stereotypes or categories? In a word, how can inclusive design be mainstreamed outside the social design project or the accessible design project? Please note that such an approach targets on all students, not only the students with disability, because the practice of inclusive learning involves all the students. It is important to know that but it will be repeated later and further on, students with disability need to be informed about provisions, services, tools available, because each student with disability differs from another one with the same disability. So, first of all, we have to empower the future student, because the point is that even though our minds are already properly set, the world around us, that means maybe the university or academy leaders, other teachers, the students themselves, they live according to the old paradigm. And even though we are eager to help and support, and as I've seen, you have developed a lot of good strategies and are definitely effective, we have to deal with the feedback from the classroom. But I will tell the stories best. Okay. I know a brilliant, intelligent, very well educated girl. She attends university, but after the pandemic, she started suffering from a very strong form of anxiety that really freezed her for 2 years in her university path. Because every time she sat an exam, she would freeze and panic. Sometimes she couldn't even say anything. Other times her performance was very, very, very poor and below her capabilities. She has no certified disability. She's not autistic, she's not blind, she's not on a wheelchair. But if we consider the definition of disability as a relationship between a person in their own biopsychosocial condition and the surrounding environment, we can really say that this girl has experienced a 2 years situational disability. That is, a disability created by the environment. Was and is, because the learning environment has not changed. The situation has changed because she started to find solution, taking care of herself, taking medicines and so on, and she has improved a lot. But is her learning environment allowing her to fully develop her own potential? Perhaps it would have been enough to allow her to take exams online, as already been tested during pandemic. But such a student has no official disability certification. Can we really define as inclusive a structure that distinguishes between disabled and non-disabled students? We have talked about inclusive design based on needs, whoever has those needs. But the issue is not so simple, because when we talk about students with visible or certified disability, then in some way the other students are ready to accept what are called distinction or preferences or favoritisms or special treatment. But are all students in the same classroom prepared to accept what is the foundation of inclusive teaching, that is individualized teaching, and therefore are they ready to accept that every single student is treated according to their functioning? Nuova first said, I want every student to progress. Are the students ready to accept that a brilliant student who has spent all the course resting on his capabilities or her capabilities, and of course presents very good works, but without actually progressing? Are they ready to accept that the brilliant student can receive a lower mark than a less amazing student who has demonstrated his or her 100% of progress? This is individualizing teaching, but are the other students ready to accept it? Because this issue touches on criteria and methodologies of evaluation, and we will address those issues later, of course. For now, I just wanted to show the other side of the question we are facing. And I have another story, the real one. This story developed before the UN Convention, before the ICF, in a time where disabled people with disabilities were labeled as handicapped, and there was no thought about inclusion. They went to special school. There was no kind of attention to inclusion, a little bit on integration. This is the story of the man in the picture. His name is Fulvio Frisone. He was born in 1966 with a spastic tetraparesis. There is a, I think, a medical condition when that characterized by the partial loss of movement or muscle weaknesses in all four limbs. And it is associated with spasticity, that is muscle stiffness. He doesn't speak, or he speaks very badly. And he was considered, until he was 17, mentally retarded. Completely unaware of what was around him. But thanks to the dedication and devotion of his parents, and also thanks to technology, because 80s was the dawning of computer, Fulvio, who can hardly speak, as I said, managed in showing his great intelligence typing on a computer keyboard, thanks to a stick that his father had attached to a helmet. The boy that couldn't speak and was considered mentally retarded graduated in physics in 1989 and currently is a researcher in physics at the university, and he's renowned in the world for his paper and studies on confusion. He is also a lecturer in conferences, international conferences, thanks to technology that supports his speaking and translates his ideas in words. In conclusion, inclusive teaching is an issue that concerns both the physical structure, the four methodology, tools, course contents, and the organization, the entire organization of the university or academy in order to work well. It is based on the capabilities of teachers, but teachers alone cannot solve everything. Moreover, inclusive design implies a conscious and critical review, a process of reflection on our teaching design process. Implies, as you have perfectly said, getting involved, questioning oneself as you already do, and that's great. Is not easy, but improving our world and possibly improving the world of everybody around us will improve the results of our students, but above all will contribute to create future experts and professionals who feel the responsibility of being environmental facilitators. And that's all, folks.